Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the testimony and in the invitation for Congress to be involved in this. But I want to just start at the beginning. Just ask everybody, does everyone agree that at some level the executive does have inherent authority under Article 2 as part of the executive power to maintain secrecy of information related to the national security? Mr. Leonard?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, but, because there's an Article 1 that says Congress makes the rules to govern the military armed forces and national security. So it's both.
Well, it's both, but I think Hamilton, when he talked, because there was a debate whether you should even have a single executive. They had revolted against George III. Some proposed a council, and one of Hamilton's main arguments for why you needed a single executive was for secrecy, particularly with regards to national security. So there's got to be, I mean, is there any place, I guess, that Congress can't go into that? Or could Congress basically legislate as far as it wants, in your judgment?
Can legislate as far as it wants. Congress has the power of the purse. That is the key, and I think the founders said separate the power of the purse from the power of the sword. That's key. It takes money to run a classification system.
I think absolutely. So the Congress could abolish the CIA if they wanted to. There's no requirement you have that. But we do have intelligence agencies. We do that. Could Congress just pass a statute saying, declassify, as much sensitive stuff as we want? Would there be any constitutional concern with doing that?
None, and Congress has already done so with the Nazi war crimes, which exposed the files of Nazis that the CIA recruited and brought to the United States. So Congress has already done that.
But when did they do that, though?
In 1998 and 1999.
Yeah, well, but I guess my point is if Congress wanted to start declassifying things that were germane and ripe right now with how our government's conducting sensitive operations, you see that would still be okay, even though it could jeopardize lives?
It would still be okay, because my bet is that this Congress and this committee would act pretty judiciously on that. You're not going to willy-nilly. You're not Julian Assange.
No, I get it, but what I'm trying to
I have a lot of confidence in your judgment.
There's certain constitutional prerogatives. We obviously have the power to legislate, of course, the purse. The executive has certain, or the executive power means something. I mean, there's certain things. And so what I'm trying to figure out is, are there certain because I think we all agree some of this stuff is ridiculous. And there's an incentive to just simply cake on more classification. Some of this stuff isn't even classified. It's being protected. But at the same time, I just think it's important to recognize that there is a legitimate reason to do it. Because I think when you overclassify, I think it actually undermines the core reason of why you want to do it. But let me just get you, Mr. Amy, down in the end.
I totally agree. I do believe that there's a constitutional protection for secrecy, but at the same time, as Tom said in his statement, I think you have to get to his point number 3, and that is don't trust it. I mean, eventually we're going to have to get down to a point where, whether it's through the challenge process or through briefings that Congress gets on questioning what the executive branch is doing.
So you look at some of these things, some of these agencies, the Antitrust Division at the Department of Justice, the Bureau of Prisons has somebody who's an original classification authority. Mr. Leonard, how did it get to be that point? Is that really necessary in those instances?
It's an example, perhaps, of when I was in my position at ISOO, one of the things I had to do was to deal with requests for agencies to get original classification authority. And quite frankly, one of the issues that I had to contend with is it was one of convenience more than anything else. And there were a number of instances where there were agencies or even small activities looking for original classification authority that had to push back because they were looking to really accomplish something that probably could have and should have been accomplished through legislation if there was really a legitimate reason to withhold information from public disclosure.
How do you analyze, because some of this stuff, it's just the agencies are embarrassed, they don't want to do it, and it's clearly just, it's not credible. But sometimes when you're trying to get information from FOIA or Congress, I mean, you are diverting the executive from kind of their core mission to actually do good. I mean, we're the first ones to criticize the government when they screw up or when they're not competent. And so how do you do this in a way that's not going to impose too many costs? I mean, for example, if we're going to always review every 10 years some of this stuff, that is going to create some costs. So how would you recommend we strike that balance? Is that a valid concern?
It very much so is, and one way would be to, as Mr. Blanton referred to, was to consolidate authority and responsibility and not spread it so far and wide within the government. And to give, I'll give you a perfect example. When I was in the Department of Defense, I could write a memo and use CIA information. The CIA trusted me to properly classify the information. They didn't want to look at it and whatever. If I came back 20 years later and wanted to work at the National Declassification Center and looked at my same memo, they wouldn't allow me to declassify it because I didn't get a paycheck from CIA. That type of redundancy can be beaten out of the system and would result in significant cost savings.
Great. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman.